Welcome to the Short-Term Rental Source podcast. It is our mission to help you learn how to successfully launch and self-manage your short-term rental with less pain and earn you more money. Enjoy interviews with industry leaders and musings about this challenging but fun STR life. Here's your host, Kim Fitzpatrick.
Hello. Welcome to the Short-Term Rental Source podcast. I am Kim Fitzpatrick, and today's guest is Danielle. And Danielle is new to short-term rentals. I helped her get her listing started. She's done a fabulous job on the Butterfly Bungalow, and she has very recently hosted her first couple of guests. And we thought this would be a great story to tell if you have not hosted any guests and you're thinking about getting into short-term rentals. And also, it's just fun to tell the stories of when we got started if you have past experience. So Danielle, how would you like to start us off with your first hosting story?
Oh my goodness. So I sort of feel like we should probably put the disclaimer, right? Like, FYI, this doesn't happen to everybody.
No, she has a very unusual start. It hasn't been necessarily an easy one, but she's handled it like a champ.
And I think that's exactly, I'll kind of lead in and just say that first and foremost, like once you make the choice to get into short term, I think you just have to, go feet first, recognize that as with any position, job, role, business, you're going to be like, oh, okay, so that didn't work out quite as I expected. Let's go ahead and pivot to a different way of doing things. So just that's my disclaimer before I get started. But yeah, thanks, Kim. I have been interested in short term for some months. And obviously did a bunch of Facebook stalking of some people and then ended up stalking enough people to meet you, Kim, and purchased my very first short term. And it's called the Butterfly Bungalow. It's one of these things where it's just this vintage 1940s home. And my story kind of starts with a vintage 1940s home. You definitely come with all of these different quirks and things that you wouldn't expect. So my first experience is renting to a group for 2 weeks. And within 24 hours of them being there, the plumbing had a mainline backup. And I think that first call to you, Kim, was like, oh God, I'm out. Like, this is not for me. This is not for me.
I remember that. And it was a surprising call, that's for sure, as we were navigating that situation. And what's funny is that as Danielle said, she just bought this home. She bought it for the purpose of short-term rental. And as she was renovating it and doing some really impressive changes to really update it, but also keep its charm, I advised her that if it was possible for her to spend a couple of nights in the house, which you did, and didn't have any problems. So even the best laid plans can go awry. And so what happened that first morning with your first guest after they had spent that first night?
Right. And I should also say, like, this call from my renters was literally my worst nightmare, right? Like, I think everyone, when they first begin, have some sort of story they've told themselves of like worst case scenario, right? And this was my story. This literally, they check in at 4. I'm calling you, I'm texting you, I'm saying everything's great, and I'm even asking, like, do I just sit here? Like, what's the plan?
Right. I remember that. And I'm just like, you're not probably going to sleep a lot tonight, but that's okay. It's going to feel stressful. You're not sure what to do, but it'll be fine. Everything will be fine.
Yeah. And I was literally thinking, like, what if they party? What if the dog tears up the couch? Things are going through your head. And then I obviously had the worst case scenario planned out too. And sometime, around 10:30 in the morning, they lightly tell me the shower curtain fell. which note to self, like do those kinds of things for anyone out there who's like really looking to get into this, like really know your property, really know the stuff you're putting up, understand like, it's only going to take a 6-foot person to like knock their head and that's going to come down or whatever. So when we're discussing this, I'm thinking, okay, this is an easy fix. I can handle this, just put it back up.
Right. These are fixable problems.
Yes. So as I'm explaining to pick it back, how to put it back up on the wall, they just gently mention that the tub is not draining as they would have expected. Lo and behold, fast forward to me kind of like, oh, this is also an easy fix, right? Like Home Depot's got 1,000 things. I can just go buy all of them and fix it myself, which I did. And I'm fixing the problem as I think. And once about 40 minutes in the home while they're off having lunch and doing their thing, I recognize that it's bigger than I can even imagine and called a plumber. And at this point, I'm actually still feeling pretty confident, by the way. I'm still feeling like, yes. I mean, people call handymen all the time. People call plumbers all the time, right?
Right. You still got this.
I still got it. And fast forward to my plumber calling me to let me know that my mainline plumbing system has busted, which is not like a fix you fix today, right? This is a fix that's going to happen like next week sometime. And this is, I have no idea what you thought, but this is where I like called you and was like, 911, what do you do?
Right. And I remember that call and it feels like it was maybe mid-afternoon on a Friday.
Yep.
And no, that was not a holiday weekend, but it was approaching the weekend. Yep. So that was an issue that is something that we needed to consider too.
Yeah, it was like, way late in the day. It was like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's on a Friday. This was going to require, big machines, the city, and like a whole bunch of stuff. And the plumber who's literally just standing there like, I can't fix it today. And I'm like, this is that moment when I have to say, this is the moment I realized that I was in the right place at the right time, because I remember feeling as a newbie, there are two modes of mentality and a mindset. Emotionally, I wanted to break down and cry and give up and just say, I'm going to cancel the reservation. You guys go do what you need to do. And I realized then that I actually cared more about what their predicament was than what my predicament was, right? Like, obviously, I was also thinking, like, how am I going to fix this? And how much money is this? And all the things an owner of a business thinks of. But that wasn't my first thought. My first thought was, how do I take care of them in a right and equitable way, right? Like, this has got to be about them and what they're experiencing right now. Because what I'm experiencing is I have this house regardless. I have somewhere to go sleep tonight.
Right. Yeah. And that's a challenging thing, but I think the way that the outcome unfolded being such a positive one in the end, sorry to skip to the ending, but, because you had your guests' needs in mind over your own sanity, even, I'm sure it felt like in that moment, I think was a real testament of your character, but also of the way it eventually came out. So your plumber told you it wasn't going to be fixed until Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah, it was like, and it's so, at that moment, like, I recognized he's not giving me a direct answer. He's saying Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. Like, it becomes this really like, I'm not sure conversation. And so that's when I called you and I was like, what do you do? Like, what do I do? Like, where do they go? What am I supposed to do? And so ultimately you and I talked about, finding a hotel that is going to accommodate these folks, right? There was a few different things about their reservation, right? They had a dog, there were 3 of them, right? Like, it wasn't a couple with no kids, or just one person, right? Like we were talking about, I had to figure out a place that was going to accommodate this group. And so when I finally got the hotel reservation, I had that next moment of like, now I've got to explain it to them, right? Because they're now going to get told, guess what? I need to move you for 5 days.
Right. And so just backtracking a little in case somebody was late to the story, this is a family of 3 with a pet, with a dog, and it was a 2-week reservation. So if it was just a couple days, of course, you would have to cancel the reservation and find something else. But their situation was that they had sold their house and were in the process of buying another one, but there's that gap of time that they needed somewhere to stay for a short period of time. So they had moved out of a home. All their stuff is in storage. They're moving into Danielle's home for 2 weeks until they can move into their future home. And now Danielle's home has no plumbing. And so you have to tell them. And I know, Danielle, because you are such a caring and sweet and kind host, that when I told you to find them a hotel, I knew what you were going to do first. And I just sort of jumped to the conclusion because I knew what we all want to do as hosts is try to find them equal or similar accommodations. You have such a lovely house. It's beautifully decorated. It's a whole home with a kitchen and a backyard and everything perfect for a family and a dog. And a hotel is just not similar. If they wanted that, they would have done that without you. But as the clock is ticking down on the day and they don't have a place to use the restroom, let alone shower, I was like, Danielle, you're going to spend hours trying to find them a place. I know you are. I love you for that, but get them a hotel. And I know you didn't want to, right?
Yeah. And I think that taught me something, not necessarily like, a hotel is going to work for everybody. And maybe it will, right? But I have to say that it was one of those things where I thought, okay, this is going to work. And it actually caused me to get back to like, one of the things we don't know as beginners is like making quick decisions and knowing the right timing for that and where like, okay, now is when I have to make this call. And I think I was learning that in that process, right? Because at the same time, I'm thinking I'm hanging on until the end here. And I really had to find out that no, that's not going to be the case. It just isn't going to be that for every single call that you get where you're like, I can't do this. Every guest is going to be like a different situation. So
yeah. So how did they take the news when you told them you needed to put them in a hotel?
Oh, yeah. So this is also, I would say newbie 101. If you can do everything in your power not to take what they're saying personal. And I'm saying this in the seat I'm sitting in today, not the seat that I was sitting in when the call happened, right?
Right.
And I think that that's key in learning this whole situation. Because when I called, they were not happy, right? Like they wanted to know why, they wanted to know what, they wanted to know all the ins and outs. And I did my very best just to like stick to the facts, explain that it was out of my control. It was totally something I could not have foreseen. Express to them my utter sincere apologies and the fact that it is my home and it is my problem, but it is definitely a problem that I obviously tried not to have happen. And I think once they saw that I was doing as much as I could possibly do to help them, the call, the mentality was a little different. They were definitely frustrated, upset. I think the other thing that I would say is putting as much of the effort and energy on me and less on them helped the situation because they felt like I was in charge, I was doing it, instead of if I would have just said, hey, I can't actually host you until Wednesday, you're going to have to find a hotel. Let me just refund you 5 days. Like, I think had I done that, it would have been worse. But because I said, no, I'm not refunding you, but I'm paying out of my pocket for this, even though theoretically they pay for it, right?
Right.
They didn't put the energy and the effort into figuring it out. I did. And I think had you not helped me kind of wrap my brain around that whole like process, that would have been a lot harder conversation to sell, right?
Yes. And I think the outcome would have been very different too, because knowing that they were upset and like you said, I think that's a really crucial thing to remember. We cannot take these things personal. They had just moved out of their home. They had extenuating circumstances that Danielle has not mentioned yet that were just really sad and difficult. And so they were at the end, they were like at their breaking point. Right. And Danielle's at her breaking point, kind of, because it's new and it's stressful. And she did handle it like a champ, but they out of their own stress reacted, and Danielle didn't. She held it together and she was very kind. And there came a point where it was like, we got to get this resolved. We got to get this resolved. And I kind of said, why don't we give it some time? They're in a hotel, they're safe, they're taken care of. We don't know how the plumbing situation is going to go yet. So if we keep updating, sometimes that's really great. And sometimes it's not. And I think, Danielle, you read the situation very well with them and how things were going. And so talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think that's the part where when we were talking, about at this point, they're in a hotel, right? And I'm still not sure like what's going to happen, right? Like no one has dug up my ground and told me my pipe's fine. Let's get it fixed. It's going to take 2 hours. They'll be back. None of that has occurred.
Right.
I am still sitting at home on a Friday night, and all I have managed to accomplish is book them in a hotel for 5 days. And I mean, I'm a project manager by trade, right? So my brain is instantly going like, I need to know what's happening Monday and Tuesday and how long is it going to take? How much, went into that mode. And then I went into solution mode and like, what should I do for them? And it seems like this is not going to be a great situation. And I should probably just let them figure out where they want to go stay instead of offer my house. And there was a moment where you had said, take the time to really like process what just happened, come back at this tomorrow, and then figure out what you want to do. And the process, when I woke up that morning, what I was processing, and this is why I think it is 100% key as a host, that you are not staying in your home. Someone else is, which means everything they're feeling, every emotion they've got going on, it can't come at you. You have to be like, I get it. I understand it. And if I was in your circumstances, I can see where that emotion is coming out, but that's all you can really do. Because I learned quickly the next day, I was like, if I call them right now and say, listen, sorry, this happened. I don't have anything certain. No one's really giving me any major, like by this date and time, it's going to be fixed. I'm just going to refund you, cancel your reservation, and let you guys go somewhere and figure something out that works best for you. I thought that in itself is not going to help, right? Like that's just adding fuel to the fire. That's adding more emotion, more stress, more work. And if they wanted to do that as a person, they would have mentioned it, right? They would have already said, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I'm mad, whatever. I want a full refund. Let me figure this out myself, right?
Right.
And it wasn't until I walked that whole mindset out with you the next morning, kind of told you what I had been thinking, that I said, my plumber's going to evaluate on Monday. The work's going to happen on Tuesday. And if I don't have an answer Tuesday that makes me feel confident, I can address it by then. So that's what that was like. And I think that is probably the hardest part, because like I'm saying this all calm, cool, and collected right now, but but it was not that way. No,
in the moment it's not, but it is good for us to realize that when things are hard, you're not alone. We all, even if we don't know each other, but we have this like common experience as short-term rental owners that something tragic has or will happen. And we do freak out on the inside, but we don't have to, our guests don't need to see that freak out, but we transform that into energy and working for them for the best outcome. Right. And you paid attention to the mood of the situation, and you didn't over communicate and you didn't under communicate. And then were they the ones to reach out next, or were you?
I was, because come Tuesday, I got in touch with their realtor to explain the scenario. Sidebar, this is one of those things where it was like, I was booking through their realtor. And so I wanted him to understand, and he had said, you know, things weren't going so well on their side with their purchase of their house, right? And here I am, it's on Tuesday, I have this information, and at this point, it's good information, right? Like I've now reached the point of like, my plumber actually has the ground dug up, he's putting a pipe in, I physically saw it. We are on track to get them back in the house. Right. And so knowing that they've been going through it and that I could call them and say this, obviously I wanted them to have the opportunity. So I called them and said, I am going to have to keep you at the hotel till Wednesday, but my plumber is out there. I've seen the work. I know what needs fixed. It is for sure going to be done on that date. You have a couple options, right? Like I am more than willing to let you, cancel the reservation and move on. And that's fine, because this is probably not, this isn't something that you were looking to do when you rented this place. And I'm also willing to just let you right back in the house and continue on with your stay, but I'll leave that into your hands. And I think once I put the control back in their hands, it was something they hadn't experienced, because everything else that had been going on in their life up to that point was out of their control. They were experiencing tons of real estate problems, including mine. And so they called me within an hour and a half and was just like, we want to come back to your house. Just give us a time and a date. And so I gave them a time and a date, and yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, it worked out. I will say I did call my plumber as soon as I was finished, and I was like, you have to guarantee me.
That's awesome. But that's good project managing, if that's a word, but yeah. Management, there we go. But yes, like keeping up to date on your contractors is really important, because sometimes they will overpromise and underdeliver, and we have to do the opposite. We can underpromise and overdeliver. But when we say you can come back in, we have to make that happen. And so that's good that you were staying on top of things and managing that way. And then at some point, so when they had to check into the hotel, they were obviously not happy, but at some point the mood changed. And it was really good when you told me how they were feeling, that you could tell that everything had de-escalated. And I think it was that time where they were reflecting. I think one of the things I hear is that you made phone calls and you spoke like voice to voice with them. And I think a lot of times we just want to message people, but there's so much that can be lost in tone. And if they are upset, as it seemed like life wasn't going well for them, your tone, as warm as you intend it, maybe wouldn't be received that way because of what they're dealing with on their end. So I think the fact that you were able to talk with them on the telephone is a big deal in a situation like that. And sometimes we forget that we can use the phones in our pockets as phones, and we just want a message always on the apps or always where it's written, and we can refer to it. And if we need to show somebody evidence, we have it. But you do miss a human element when you don't just pick up the phone and call. And so I think your calling really helped things, and your timing helped keep things going as smooth as possible.
Yeah, I think there is something to be said for kind of understanding how to manage the relationship with your guest. in business and in general, right? Saying what you know from a very fact-based messaging is like best practice, right? Now, caring and honesty and just being nice, like that should come naturally. And like in my mind, I just kept thinking like I need to stick to the facts and I shouldn't over communicate. I shouldn't under communicate, but I also should make sure they can, like, they can't see me, right? But like, how do I show them that I'm not being dry, but they can hear that I'm actually like stating the facts with the care and the concern and the kindness that they can't see, right? And I do feel like, and I mean, obviously this is probably a whole nother podcast, but I wonder about the messaging and the kind of like covering your bases from a messaging perspective, because this really was something that, I mean, I could have reiterated or documented in some way through the map through the app, but it just really, you can't do this and still come across as caring and kind in a message. Like, I don't even know how I would have described what I was trying to do for them in that space. And that call, they called me back and said, hey, we really want to stay in your house. And I was just like relieved, right? Like this just utter, like everything about my body just kind of went whew. And I remember, because I would have been okay either way. But I remember immediately saying, there's a restaurant nearby your hotel. I'd like to go get a gift card and let you guys go there for dinner. And the guests were like, no, 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 thank you. So you've been so patient. You've been so kind. And she said, you have to be just as stressed as we are. You're stressed. We're stressed. Everybody's just, you know, it's a lot. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like they know that while I'm cool, calm, cool, and collected, like verbally, right? Like inside there, they understood, like I have to be just like out of my mind. And I was.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that. I love that turnaround. And I think it comes from the relationship, and you're not getting into a long-term relationship with these people, but you make a connection for a point in time. And it is, I think, probably for them really heartwarming to know that you're doing everything you can. And given that time over the weekend, I think they really could settle in, and they, instead of just being back and forth, nothing's happening, nothing, you know, and constantly say, sorry, nothing's happening. It did give them that time to really like digest it and go, okay, she's done this for us. She's done this for us. She's done this for us. She's doing everything. Yes, this would be a terrible, they were able to see your point of view because you first saw their point of view. And I just think that is great. And so the other thing is that, what did I want to say about this? The one thing about this was an off-platform agreement, because you didn't find them through the typical online travel agencies. You found them through a realtor, which how did that go? How did that piece go for you?
I think it was better. I've heard a lot of people from a beginner standpoint say that, you know, there needs to be kind of an understanding of setting up your property and knowing your property and really getting through the quirks of what you may or may not know. So I sort of feel like even though this wasn't going to be my first route, right? This came about from a friend of a friend of a friend kind of a thing, and then realtor network. And I think it was the best option for me to kind of experience the property without having that pressure of, oh my gosh, right? I've got a platform I need to be kind of like informing things of, but then also, you know, I in some ways you could go both ways, right? It could have been a great experience. They might have been like, she was it's not her fault. And then also it could have been helpful to have that backing and that help on the other side. I'm not really sure because I haven't necessarily experienced it, but I will say that I felt like it for me was the best way to kind of test the waters and kind of understand what I'm in for, what I should and shouldn't do. And I think as a newbie, one of the biggest things I have found, and obviously that's the whole reason that, you know, you have a podcast and you offer coaching, is that you've got to have a mentor, you have to have a network, you have to have a coach of some kind, something that can guide you. When I was first starting out in project management, I had a coach, I had a mentor, right? And then over my career now, I'm obviously doing that. And it's like, so I knew right away, like someone has to help me through this because something's going to happen. I'm not going to know what to do. And I think this helped me, right? It helped me have my first guest. They're off platform. It was kind of an easy, just setting up the booking. But then I also ran into issues, and that set me up with you, which then set me up with like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. And as a newbie, I feel like those are some really good tips of just understanding your property heavily as much as you possibly can and making sure someone's walking you through it. Otherwise, you're just so blind to it.
Well, and I'm thankful that you say that. It feels good to know that it was helpful. The things I provided, and I shared some automated messages with you and some strategies along the way as you just ask questions. I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I handle it. This is what I do. Have you thought about this? So I appreciate you hearing you say that, because it is nice to know that what we are doing is helping people. I mean, we would love for everybody to just like smooth sailing on your first short-term rental. And we had no idea that this would not have been. It was smooth sailing up till that first morning. There was literally no indication.
Right?
So I am glad that, and I'm glad to walk through this with you too, because it keeps me sharp, as I have not had my plumbing issue like you described. And so I'm like, ooh, yeah, I've learned something from the process too.
Yeah.
So in our last 5 minutes, is there anything else that you can think of that, as you've set up your listing and hosted your first couple of guests now, that you can look back and go, this was really super important, or maybe I think differently about this, or something that you can offer to people that are just starting out?
Oh, I mentioned it before, but I think I can't reiterate it enough, is really knowing your property. It seems silly, but like taking a shower, not once, but 3 times, 4 times a week, right? Like, I didn't know my shower head sucked until I took a shower, and I was like, this is terrible. So I think that part is key. Just really understanding your property, its quirks, its kinks, and even if it's brand spanking new, just knowing what it has to offer and what could potentially, like something you should probably see around the corner, has been key for me. And then I think I'll leave with a second one, which is let it go. Like, you're never gonna see around every corner. Like, I literally would never have thought the plumbing was gonna like back up and blow up. So let it go. Like, it's fine, meaning, yes, you may have to fix stuff, but just know that it's gonna tinker over time. It's gonna tinker.
Yes. So would you call short-term rentals passive investments?
Maybe in 6 months. Re-interview me.
I think there's a misconception that we as short-term rental owners just sit back and watch the money flow in. And I know some of my friends in my circle joke about how I just sit back and watch it flow in. But what they don't know is plumbing issues and Wi-Fi issues and who knows what issues, whether they are the fault of the property or a miscommunication on our part, or the guest didn't read something. There's always going to be a little something. And yeah, I think we can manage a lot of it. At this point, I will say today I was really evaluating how many guests I actually communicate with back and forth, because I was speaking on automated messages, and it's about half. It really is about half of the guests. Now, I know that's not your stat yet, but it will be. And it's some are set it and forget it, and they're very easy and everything goes super smooth. And sometimes it doesn't, as you know, but I would say that you probably have about 12 great guests coming your way after all of you've been through.
Yeah, and we probably got 3 or 4 other podcasts that we could create off of some of my experiences thus far.
Just in the first couple, absolutely. And I love that you use your realtor as a network, and I hope people kind of picked up on that, because I do want to talk to you more about that in a future episode, because I think that's a really great niche that is worth exploring. So hopefully you can join us again and we can discuss maybe a more lighthearted and fun topic.
Yeah, I'll tell you all the newbie great stuff, the things that happen that you're never gonna experience unless you really dive in and like get past the bad.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it has been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. Take care.
Yeah. Yep. Bye.